Workshop 2. Workshop 2. Workshop 2. Workshop 2. Workshop 2.
A very warm welcome, everyone here in the room, in the workshop room 2 in Lillestrøm in Oslo, at the IGF, and remote, wherever you sit around the globe. My name is Patrick Lange. I'm Head European Affairs at Deutsche Welle, which is Germany's international broadcaster, and I'm very happy to moderate this session here that has been co-organized by the BBC and Deutsche Welle. So, public service media and meaningful digital access. This workshop will deal with the lessons learned so far from policies followed by public service media to reach audience via the internet, and the challenges they face, particularly in reaching global audiences. You might understand that at least for Europe, for public broadcasting, internet censorship is a growing issue, but not so important issue so far, but potentially it is when you look at some countries that start really limiting the access to information, to put it that way. But on a global scale, there is a growing digital authoritarianism, and this poses a challenge for information providers, for media makers, for human rights communities. We're talking about safe space communication, but we're talking about journalism also brought to audiences to a less and less free extent. So what is the link to the concept of meaningful connectivity? That will be explored in a minute. And then we will step to different aspects of this challenge we are facing. We will explain a little bit practically how international broadcasters are running this problem. And on the other hand, at the second part, let's say, what's important is to understand what is the policy implications in this, the regulatory implications, and where this meaningful digital access needs to be strengthened from a policy and a regulatory and a legal framework, and there is room to improve by far, obviously, and that is what we will discuss with the following protagonists and you, because we consider you as an expert community, be you online or be you in the room, so you will have space to discuss among yourselves and with us, obviously. So the panelists so far are, first of all, I mentioned Abdallah Al-Salmi. He's policy advisor at the BBC, and he was supposed to sit next to me because he's the real organizer of that session, but his flight was first delayed and then cancelled, so no chance to come over from London. Hello, Abdallah, in London. Very warm welcome. So I'm turning to the second speaker on screen, Paola Gori, who is the Secretary General and the coordinator of the European Digital Media Observatory, EDMO. Hello, Paola. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
And last but not least, with me is Poncelet Ileleji. He is the CEO of Joko Labs in Banjul, Gambia, and he is an outstanding ICT expert. When you look at his LinkedIn track down, he has been member of a lot of boards and experts groups that deal particularly with ICT in development. Thank you very much for making the way, Poncelet. And last but not least, we have Oliver Ings. He is distribution manager at the BBC, and he is the online moderator. I hope he is there, and we will get the questions from the audiences via Oliver. Now let's simply start. Abdallah, give us an overview. What are we talking about when we talk about meaningful connectivity or meaningful digital access? Are you going to share your screen with your presentation by yourself, or you want me to do that?
So I am sharing my screen now, and I wanted to ask if you could see it.
Should come. So far we see you.
So the IGF host's telling me that I can see it.
So I cannot see it on screen. Now we see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'll get started. And thank you, Patrick, for the introduction. And again, apologies for not being able to be physically in workshop room 2. I'm going to arrive later tonight, so hopefully we will meet some of you over the week. So to begin to talk about meaningful digital access, it's really a good start to think of how technology and communications evangelists tended to lump sum all internet users in one group. So for example, someone who can send only text messages on WhatsApp over a 2G connection is put or placed in the same group with someone who has a super fast broadband and can use Apple's latest VR headset to play games. So over the last few years, some civil society groups, such as the Alliance for Affordable Internet, came up with this concept of meaningful digital access. And the idea behind it was that we need to go beyond just simple connectivity and beyond just having a device that is connected to the internet, because it's all about the experience. It's all about what the internet users can make of the internet. And the meaningful digital access has a number of elements. The definition is not really set in stone, so it's a bit flexible at the moment. But the first one is about reliability and affordability of the connectivity. Again, here we're talking about the costs of data that vary largely between one country and another. Probably it's getting cheaper, but still, in some geographic contexts, it's a prohibitive aspect of using the internet. The second element is the appropriate devices. And the idea here is about how many devices does a person have, and do they have a keyboard in their device or not when they are using the internet? So the more devices they have, the better specifications of the devices, their internet experience is going to improve. And number 3, which touches on the issue of the digital divide and issues of development, which is very important, is digital literacy and skills. And again, the UN and a large number of other organizations have been working on this, and it's a huge subject. It also touches upon one of the points that some of our panelists will speak about today, which is disinformation. To what extent is the user able to enjoy their internet experience without being subjected to organized disinformation campaign, either by governments, by companies, or even by individuals? Fourth is the relevant content in local languages. And again, here, I think we have made huge strides in this, but again, more work needs to be done in making online content available in languages where people find it easy to speak and to use the internet. And last but not least, number 5 is the safe and inclusive digital environments. And this is here we get into the area of cybersecurity. We get into the area of access and continuity of internet access. Is there an internet shutdowns? Is there censorship and blocking? And all of these elements come under as one of the requirements for a meaningful digital access. Now, the UN has their own standard, which is called Universal Meaningful Connectivity. And it's very similar to meaningful digital access, but there are differences. So universal meaningful connectivity, or in short UMC, is more of a development goal that some UN organizations such as the ITU, the International Telecommunications Union works on in cooperation with governments, in cooperation with civil society. And the idea is to upgrade the experience of online access based on specific metrics that have to do with how many people are connected to the internet and to what extent they are able to use data on a day-to-day basis. What purposes they use the internet for? Is it for business? Is it for social networking or for looking for a job? The aim of the universal meaningful connectivity is the same as the meaningful digital access, in the sense that if people don't have access to a good connection, they can't look for a job. They can't keep in touch with their family. They can't express their opinions freely on the internet. However, the only difference here is that the MDA is an outcome. It really relates to the experience and the quality of it, of using the internet, while UMC is a goal in itself and policy. And so the UMC as a metric, there's a lot of data that's available already. If you go to the ITU data hub online, you will find really a good dashboard that shows you the scores of all the countries in the world which are members of the ITU, and where you can really see where more work needs to be done. For example, some of these scores, if it's up to 100, if it's 40 to 50, the UMC metric is limited. If it goes all the way up to 95 and 200, then it means that the target has been achieved. And yeah, so the last slide is about really this session, and we're trying to look here at how public service media work to enhance and respond to these various challenges in attaining the status of meaningful digital access. So I'm going to stop here and get back to you, Patrick.
Thank you very much, Abdallah, for that first introduction to camp a little bit the scene. I think it's very important to distinguish between an outcome and an objective, and I think we will come back to both of it, because we would like to look at it from a comprehensive point of view. You have mentioned different use cases which play with meaningful digital access, let's say in the exchange between people looking for a job, for instance, inform themselves. From another perspective, it's also from the sender side. You can say that there's one issue which is really a bigger issue, is the access to information on a global scale, which is limiting more and more. And I would like to jump in and show you now a little bit what does that mean to public service media like the BBC, us, and others. And if Laura could launch my presentation, that would be great. So thank you very much. So as I said, we are an international broadcast. I think you know roughly what we do. The map of press freedom that you see here is the guiding line for what we do. We provide unbiased information for free minds, and in a similar logic, BBC and the former USAGM, at least with some of their grantees, have been underway to provide independent information, reliable information, where there is limitations to that, particularly from local media or state media or whatever. So as BBC and others, we provide this information in these local languages and made by teams from these countries. So we are not reporting about Germany to Gambia or Senegal. We are informing people in Russia about what's happening in Russia and in Ukraine, right? And obviously, there is interest on the global scale. We reach 320 million users a week. And when you look at the geographical dispatching, then you see also that most of them are reached on continents where there is a, let's say, limited space of information, be it by technical means, be it by market means, or be it by digital authoritarism. We will have a closer look at Eastern Europe and Central Asia, because there is where the game plays at the moment when you look at censorship. Independent content that would otherwise be denied through censorship, disinformation, and one-sided reporting. That's what our final impact should be. Now, on one hand, we are all journalists. We are used to create great journalistic content. But what are we telling taxpayers when they pay for this great content when we cannot get it through to the audiences? So since many years, we and others invest also in censorship understanding and teaching people circumventing censorship, because otherwise they cannot access these contents. And by the way, this research on circumvention, for instance, is nothing we do exclusively for our own company. We share with the BBC and others, for instance, and that relates also to a lot of exile media or media that are outside of the country where they report for. You can mention Medusa for Russia and others, for instance. So that's not only a matter for public service media like us, it's a matter for a lot of free and independent media. The Deutsche Welle is blocked in China, in Iran, in Egypt, in Belarus, in Russia, in Turkey to some extent. And since 2012, we started looking into circumvention technologies. And as for Iran, we are very successful together with partners, obviously. And you understand that since a couple of days, there's a complete shutdown in Iran. And there are expert groups working on this issue. And Iran is a good example where over a long period of time, you really can build a skilled community that is able to access these contents via a range of tools, while the censorship is very efficient. The Iranian censorship is quite efficient, let's say. Maybe not so efficient with the Chinese one, but that's a matter of how the internet has been constructed. The Chinese internet has been built as an inner internet from the beginning, and the Iranian internet was an open one, let's say, but in a developing phase with limited connections to the outside global internet at a certain point of time, where it was easier to cut it or control it. When you look at the Russian internet, for instance, that is a different story, because this was a fully fledged, connected, globally interconnected internet, which is now censored step by step on a testing basis also, because the Russians cannot know exactly what else works still when they cut something on another hand and they want to avoid. So it's a kind of testing, but they are moving forward step by step and even speed up the process to deconnect everything, right? So in Iran, we touch millions of people on a weekly basis, and it's not only digital natives that can use these technologies needed to access these contents. So internet censorship, that's something you have to understand, is a complex issue. It's technically and politically a complex issue. It relates on a variety of technologies, policies, means and methods, and it's a permanent cat and mouse to understand what precisely is the technology to use to censor content, filter content, block content, or throttle content, or whatever, and then the mitigation measure is also adapted to these variety of methods. These methods vary from country to country, and they vary from, let's say, censorship policy to censorship policy. You cannot remove digital censorship from the outside of the technical center, so to say, and you cannot dig holes in the censorship wall. You can try to get around the wall. That's something that's very important to understand. So we are not counter-hacking or counter-attacking, but we try to provide tunnels, funnels, or whatever to make people access to internet they are kept away from. The second condition is people in this country want access to that content. It's their decision at the end of the day. We provide the content, we provide an explanation how to access it, but it's their decision at the end of the day. I can tell you that that poses ethical questions on those doing this kind of stuff on one hand, and it's also legal questions. Why a public service media like Deutsche Welle or BBC is able in front of a financial court also, and according to the law that it identifies the mandate of a public broadcaster like with us, what is the legal basis on which we can provide explainers to audiences that explains how to access VPNs or apps that has been co-developed with IT specialists from our specialists that gives them access to that content. What is the legal basis on that? We did a research on that and we asked the German Bundestag legal service, scientific service, to give it an answer. And the answer was, it is Article 19. The access for free access of information, Article 19 UN Charter on Human Rights. That is the legal basis. And all the countries we're talking about that are censoring contents from us and others have signed this Charter. And international law is breaking national law. So from a legal perspective, this is safe play, simply on this article. So let's start a discussion. What else? Just to speed up a little bit, we provide internet freedom via our app, Psyphone Tor. The session before here was from our friends with Tor. We work with them, obviously. They host also our contents on their Tor servers. When you access Tor, you see our content, for instance, which is very important. We work with proxies, mirror servers, and a lot of other, means to get people our access to our content. So we are quite skilled in reading what needs to be done to get people access to these contents, because we do that work since 12 or 13 years. Nevertheless, it is always a kind of challenge because it is costly. You need server space for mirror server, for mirroring content, for instance, and you pay to Amazon or whoever for the server space. That's really costly. But that circumvention works, can you see from the access? This is a chart from the protests in Iran 2 years ago, and you see clearly where the peaks are. That's clearly every time when there was shutdown, when there was protests, where there was limitations on the internet, people start seeking for information. You can see also this chart from Russia. You see that there is a peak around a weekend in June. What happened at that weekend in June? It was the coup by Prigozhin. When there's crisis in the countries, it was the same. When you look at the day that Navalny died, you see the same peak. When there is crisis, people in these countries start seeking for, let's say, alternative information. And that's why public service media and exiled media are so important for these audiences, right? Okay, thank you very much. By the way, this is a small tool we co-developed with an Italian organization, ONI. It's called News Media Scan. And if you install it, it shows you which websites in a given country are currently blocked, effectively blocked, and which ones are free accessible. Nice monitoring tool that gives you a glimpse on what's going on in your country. So this is to give you an overview over what we do and how that relates to very practically to the concept of meaningful digital access. Great. I would like to hand over to Paula now to give us a glimpse on policy aspects. Hi, Paula.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you
Okay.
well. Go ahead, please.
Great. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for your great presentation. I noted some keywords which I will try to take also in my presentation. So, for those who do know, EDMO, it stands for European Digital Media Observatory, and we deal with disinformation, and we are one of the pillars of the EU actually to tackle disinformation. But really, in a nutshell, you can see us as a multi-stakeholder and multidisciplinary platform that tries to understand disinformation and, as you know, understanding disinformation.
Now Paula is frozen.
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, you are back. Go ahead.
Okay, very good. Just very quickly, I wanted to reflect a little on the link between UMC and disinformation, because first a step back. I mean, Abdallah presented it very well, and I was thinking of a metaphor, and it's like when you build connectivity, it's like when you build the infrastructure, which means think of, for example, the highway. Now, we are all happy that we have a highway, but if without rules, it wouldn't be so useful, because actually there would be a risk of having accident, or, I don't know, people walking on the highway and then having actually death, accidents, and so on. So there are a few rules. We are all free on the highway, but there are still a few rules. And this is somehow the same that happens with connectivity and content, in the sense there is an infrastructure, but we need not so many, but at least a few rules and at least principles which are globally shared. Otherwise, it's hard to manage. And so this is somehow, if you want, my starting point. Now, when it comes to disinformation, and we discussed that in a prior session, I mean, the whole issue is quite complex. And also the solution is complex, and it's a multi-solution, if you want, with a full respect of fundamental rights and freedom of expression. But now linking it to public service media, which is, if you want, the core here in this session, I think there are a few reflections to be made. The first is that public service media is often seen as one of the solutions to tackle disinformation, and I think this is rightly so. And indeed, at least in the EU, there is the policy of the EU is to invest a lot and to support independent quality journalism, and to support the infrastructure for this journalism to actually be accessible. We also have to be honest. In some occasions, unfortunately, public service media are also sharing this information. We should be blind on that. There were a few occasions in some countries in which this is happening, or happened and is happening. But I think that once we are honest on that, I think we can clearly invest also on the solution side, where public service media play a key role. And as you rightly said, I think that crisis situations are those moments in which we really have the evidence that they are playing a key role. I think when we saw it all during the COVID crisis, we were accessing public service media more than before, because we were all looking for information. We were all lost. We were also accessing quite a lot of disinformation and online content, but public service media were in the end the media that everybody was relying on, actually, to get safe information. Now, for public service media to work, I think that or to be reliable, I think what is very important is transparency. You may be familiar with what we have in the EU, which is the European Media Freedom Act, among others. And according to the European Media Freedom Act, there should be transparency on the ownership, on the structure, on the funding of the PSM. Why am I saying that? Because, as you rightly said, the choice is on the users, is on the citizens. And so while public service media are not imposing them, they are just being there as an alternative, or as one of the alternatives. It is important for the citizens to be sure about who is behind, how they are funded, how they are working, because I think this is an element that gives reliability and that helps the users trust. Then, of course, as we were saying, citizens can access any information they want and any source they want, and this stays. And I just wanted to maybe also close, because I know that we are a little late in this session, but I wanted to say something which is, I think, very important. I think there was an unfortunate, how can I say, coincidence between if you want, an issue in the business model of traditional media, including BPSM, and in parallel, as we all know, a shift from advertisers from offline to online, but also, if you want, in the way that public service media produced and shared the news. I talked to many journalists of PSM, and there's a sort of mea culpa in the sense that it is important to have a more innovative but also positive approach to sell news, because otherwise there is a risk that the users and the citizens actually are not interested in quality news, which is honestly a pity. So this is something where I see, for example, BBC and Deutsche Welle are actually quite good examples of very positive examples, because they invest a lot on, if you want, new ways of producing content and of sharing content, and also try to be less sensationalist in their content, in their headlines and so on. But somehow it is important that PSM play a role also in not only in being trustworthy because of the structure, but also in being attractive because of their content. And I will close it here, and I just wanted to thank you really for the work that you are doing, because it needs some courage to do what you are doing, and this is really in the interest of citizens.
Thank you very much, Paula. Very interesting points. I think we will come back to one or two, particularly the building blocks you mentioned on this trustworthiness, which is extremely important when you look at content shared via the variety of distribution forms you don't own. I'm saying the platforms, for instance, and particularly the user habits, which play an incredible role in all that. Let's come back to that later, but first of all, and I made you wait here on the screen. Poncelet, go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, I think personally, good morning, everybody. When we look at public service media and meaningful digital access, I like to look at it from a grassroots level. What information do community radios are able to provide to their citizens? In most of the cases, you look at sub-Saharan Africa, for example, my beloved continent, where only about 37% of the population have broadband connectivity. In most cases, if I take the Gambia, my home, whereby you have people who live in rural areas, they have internet connection, but they don't have meaningful connectivity, because sometimes most of the big telcos, what do? They put their towers in most of the big cities, municipal cities. So people in the villages and in rural areas in most parts of Africa, they get their information from all these community radio stations, some of these community radio stations, they also link up with the BBC or Deutsche Welle to produce information. So the most important thing is that with public media access, we have to strengthen our community radio stations. We have to give them more digital literacy tools and link them up to community network centers, whereby they can be able to download information relevant from big media houses to disseminate to their population. And when I'm looking at it from a grassroots perspective, we have to know that what does the average common man want in a rural area? He wants to get information on education, health, agriculture. Those are the basic information he needs to live his life and contribute to the well-being. Now, in terms of what Paolo talked about, and when you look at disinformation, yes, if you don't equip community-based public media with the right tools to be able to provide good news and updated news that is not disinformed, what have a lot of people now doing? They get their information, fake news spreads through mainly messaging apps like WhatsApp. So someone just sends a message and it goes viral and it's fake. But who debunks all this information? Is the community radio say, oh, that is not true, that X and Y activist has been arrested, blah, blah, blah. It's not true, this happened and everything. So the strength for meaningful connectivity on information is strengthening our community based radio stations, and that can be made possible through what I would call big public media like BBC, like Deutsche Welle, who work around different parts of the world. So they have to have partnerships so that with local community radio stations, give them digital literacy tools for this to be achieved. I'll lastly say that if you look at the Global Digital Compact implementation, one of the key things there is the digital divide. We still have 2.6 billion people in the world that are not connected. And if you want people to be connected, once you equip them with the right information through public media, indirectly they'll be connected. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Poncelet. That is a very important point. Just to put a question to understand correctly, what you're referring to is the let's say the technical infrastructure first, getting more people, more speedy, technically access to information via a policy to provide, let's say, high-speed internet in rural areas, particularly in Africa. Do I understand correctly that you are pledging for a speed up, infrastructural approach also to provide this right?
Yes, in a way, yes, but we have to live with the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is that we are still a long way for achieving meaningful connectivity on broadband in most parts of Africa. That is the reality. But how do you do it? Is by developing the capacities of community radio stations so that they have that capacity. They have, linking it up with a community network center, they have internet connectivity to get good information to disseminate to that community. So when you do that, the information that the average person in a rural setting might not be able to get because he doesn't have meaningful connectivity, through his local radio station, he will be able to get those information because they are equipped.
Yep.
So that's why I'm linking up that the meaningful access I'm talking about, I'm linking it up with public media, and that public media I'm referencing is what is at the community level. And that's the community-based radio stations, who again, for world news, for other things, can link up to BBC Deutsche Welle. You have all these learning platforms. They can link up to these learning platforms to provide other services in education, health, agriculture that people need to have.
Exactly. That's you're absolutely right, and that's what's happening, by the way, because we, for instance, we work with partners with that can pick content and distribute that content on their own platforms. We co-develop content, and by the way, like BBC with the Media Action, we provide trainings, and that trainings relates also on making local media into online reporting and everything that comes with it. So let me turn to you guys here in the room, and let me also ask our online moderator Oliver Ings if there is a question that has been put forward so far from those who are connected online.
Good day to everybody. Thank you. I can't see any questions in the Zoom chat at the moment, but I do see that Paula has her hand up. So perhaps we should give the floor to her.
Go ahead, Paula.
Only at the condition that there are no questions, of course, from the audience. I just wanted to kind of go back to what Poncelet was saying, because I think it's very important. And I think there is another two elements. One is we don't know, we are not fact-checking, or we don't know what is going through private messaging app, which is absolutely correct. I will add another layer, which is we even don't know the answers that Gen AI is giving to people. So whenever you ask an AI chatbot about something, it is giving you an answer and no one knows it. It is like between you and the chatbot, which is creating an additional element, probably even more scary. And the second element is, but you, Poncelet, are more familiar with the African continent, but I remember some years ago, Meta and Google were sending balloons and drones to provide connectivity in some African regions. And among the condition was the fact that you could only access a limited number of websites, including, of course, Facebook. Then if this is the case, and then if there is lots of disinformation, but also hate speech and so on those platforms, then somehow the users, they are locked in, the citizens, because they have the connectivity, but it is by no means meaningful nor safe, because you are accessing actually content which is which is disinformation or even worse, illegal speech. So I think this is quite important. And on just very quickly, again, on the messaging, I think it is very linked to the urban and rural areas, and also to the fact that as human beings, we trust our families, we trust our friends. So it is somehow replicating the word of mouth situation that we also had in the past, but as you rightly say, in a way more scary way, because there is still this convincing element that if it comes from the online, it is trustworthy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. We have a question in the room here. Sir, go ahead. Yeah, it's working. Yeah.
Yes, Giacomo Mazzone from Eurovisioni. I have a question in general to all the speakers that is about the. It seems to us that the fact-checking is not enough. We need to go towards a more comprehensive approach, more holistic approach. That means having regulation that will help in the negotiation with the platforms in order to be more effective in the work that you do. I know that recently there has been a pledge launched by EBU and the Association of the Newspapers to the platforms. Can you tell more about that, if you are aware?
If I will come in there, I will first want to talk about when you mention regulation. We shouldn't have regulation on content. It goes against freedom of speech. So anyone, and immediately you start trying to regulate content, then we are infringing on the rights of people. Yes, there's a moral issue on what kind of content you produce, and we have to be able to fact-check information, and that is why a lot of countries, a lot of organizations, they are fact-checking information. And the last thing I will say, it's also the moral duty for people, like where you see most messages, whether it's on TikTok or on a WhatsApp messaging app, and you get an information, you just post it to send it to other people without even fact-checking it, and you are supposed to be the educated one. In most cases, most of the people that do, carry all this hate speech or disinformation are the educated folks. And so we have to do a lot of stuff whereby so-called educated folks are now using all these platforms to misguide majority of the populace, and we have to work hard in changing that. But to bring about regulation of content is a no-go for me. Thank you.
Okay, very strong commitment. Thank you very much. Paula, I have this question from Giacomo in mind that relates to the role of the platforms. I can say from my experience for public broadcasters, and I think you know that very well, Giacomo, because that's true for other public broadcasters as well, or for most of the media, but a little bit different for the commercial media than for the public media, I guess, is to play the platforms. I mean, you can't read the platforms. We don't know what the platforms are doing with our content. You don't know what is in the black box. We have expert teams sitting that check what goes from our newsrooms in the black box, and they can check what comes out of the black boxes in terms of audience. And then they guess what the algorithm is doing, why, with your content. And then they advise on the newsrooms to adapt the content according to their guessing without knowing really what the platform is doing with your content. And obviously, many journalists and content producers are tilting between we have to get rid of the platforms and how we can play them best. And that is very difficult to play. But from your perspective, because Edmo is really at the heart of assessing also what that means, what is your assessment on that from a regulatory point of view? And I know that we are tilting back a little bit to the European context. I will widen up again for the global context in a minute. Paula.
Yes. You got a little frozen, but I hope I got the question. So first, I wanted just to reinforce
We all
what
get
was
always
said.
freezing when we talk about the platforms, you know, that's normal.
No, I just wanted to say that I first wanted to reinforce what was said. Regulation should not be on the content, and this is very important. And this is also, for example, the approach of the Digital Services Act. It's not on the content, it is on the risks that the way the platform work actually can pose. So this is very important. Now, on what you were saying on content that is on platforms, I think this is the overall point that we are making since years, that there is no transparency in the algorithmic decisions. So we are really not fully aware why we're seeing a given piece of news rather than the other. And let me also say that I'm probably even the platform still don't know, because as far as I know, it's an algorithm that works on an algorithm that works on another algorithm. So they somehow tweak it so much that honestly, I fear that in some occasions they even lost control on this whole tweaks on the algorithms. But clearly, what we know is that emotions fuel negative content, and especially negative emotions. So whenever a content is emotionally strong, it is like based on fear, on division, on threat, and so on. It becomes more viral, and this is a way to tweak the algorithm. And this, in my opinion, is why, unfortunately, some media then move to sensationalism content, because it actually moves the algorithm more than a plain information that is without emotions and is not emotionally emotional. But going back to the regulation that we were saying, I think that we are going, and I was saying that in the previous session, with the global principles that we are seeing, with the Digital Global Act, with the Global Digital Compact, with the UNESCO guidelines, and so on. I think we are agreeing on basic principles. And in the EU especially, as I was saying earlier, what we are doing is we are looking at if the way the platform work can actually be misused. Let's put it in a very, very simple way. So it's not about the content. It's just the way you're working can be misused by malign actors. And this creates risks to public security, public health, civic discourse, and so on. And that's where the regulation is, because as it was said, we cannot get into the content.
Thank you very much, Paula, so far. So there's a lady standing since minutes on the microphone.
I didn't want to interrupt. Good answers.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. The floor is yours.
My name is Thora. I'm a PhD researcher coming out of Iceland. I'm studying how VLOPs and VLOSE, very large platforms, are undermining democracy in the EEA. And my problem is, of course, scarcity of data and the black box. Now, I have a 20-year experience working in IT and building large systems. So in my mind, I see the black box. But as an academic, now the DSA is supposed to give me access, but it is not. The platforms are dragging their feet, and I again am asking here and sort of lobbying on behalf of academia, are you guys doing any academic work and demanding data through the DSA? If not, what is hindering it, and what can we do to fix this problem so we don't always are theorizing with the law, then comes the black box, and we are studying the outcome, because that's, of course, a futile thing. Thank you.
Yeah. Dora, thank you very much. That's really the right question at that moment, because I was just about to try to link the different aspects that we have had now, right? So the access to this data is one regulatory thing, and the DSA is at the heart of it. And we understand that the EU is slow in, pushing that forward. Maybe there is an overarching political item in it, tax or something like that. I don't know exactly. But the question is the following. And this question goes to Poncelet and goes also to Paula, but also to you guys here in the room and online. So we have touched based on the censorship issue at the beginning, which is it's a part of meaningful access to digital access, right? Then Poncelet has spoken about the challenges that you see in Africa, for instance, which lay partly on another level. I'm not saying there's no censorship, there is, but meaningful access means much more. and leads to skills of media, but also to technical development. The access to data on the large platforms and the regulatory questions that comes with it is another aspect. So I have at least three different elements which are not easy to link together when we asked what needs to be done policy-wise or on a regulatory basis to push these challenges forward. So what do you think where to attack? You mentioned, Paula, the EMFA, for instance, and the DSA has been mentioned. So what I'm saying, there are things in place. Why aren't they working, and what needs to be done to make them better work, right? UNESCO initiative, you have the Global Compact. All this has been mentioned. So tell us where to work on to make them better perform all these elements that are in place that can provide for meaningful digital access. Go ahead, Abdallah.
Yeah.
So probably I want to really look at the issue of the international kind of human rights aspect of access. Article 19 is really, I would say, is really outdated, and we need to have another look at it, update it, and renew commitments to it. The other issue is that the multi-stakeholder model, since we are at the IGF, it's good to mention it. We have been, for a number of years, we have been, excuse me, we have been hearing a lot about support for the multi-stakeholder model of governing the internet. Oftentimes it comes as a response by some civil society groups and some governments to the efforts by particular governments to try and kind of reshape the internet as we know it. We really need to kind of energize efforts working towards a real multi-stakeholder model. My idea is that we can start with the local branch of your IGF by kind of trying to build coalition, talk to your government, and try to push for an internet that is really open and in a way regulated to protect its current openness and the fact that it has no borders. We really cannot continue to work on this legal loophole. If I'm going to make this comparison now, if you look at shortwave radio and satellite TV, they are protected by rules of the International Telecommunications Union. So governments cannot jam them. Governments cannot disrupt these broadcasting technologies. But the internet now, it's not protected. Any government can shut down the internet at any time without a due recourse to legal background or text. Any government can block websites, again, at will, with no questions and no justification provided. So my call to action is about re-energizing the local IGF forums and to kind of to start from that point.
Thank you very much.
If I may just
separate statement, particularly saying Article 19 is outdated. So over to Paula.
On data access quickly, or I would love to have more time. So first of all, you are completely right. And the current policy framework establishes actually the obligation that the platforms give access to researchers, to independent researchers, both access to public and to private data. What is still missing is the delegated act. So the Commission should publish a delegated act, which makes this operational, and then there should be no excuses. So we really hope that this will be active. What EDMO did already years ago, we did a legal analysis on whether having access to private data would infringe GDPR, and you can find on our website a good report saying that actually it is fine to get access to those data. So we are also covered on that side, and we actually even worked on an independent intermediary body that could work in between digital services coordinators, so kind of with the digital services coordinators in between researchers and platforms. So this is, I fully agree with you. Just one thing I wanted to say is that once we will get access to those platforms, to those data, there will be two main issues. The first is, will all organizations be equipped financially and infrastructurally to deal with all this data? Because there is a risk of two-speed academic institutions and civil society organizations. The big and rich ones, they will make it. The smaller ones not, which is an issue also if you look at some specific country It's not only in Europe, but now the DSA is for Europe. So think of, for example, the Eastern countries and so on, but also countries like Italy. I'm not sure if so many universities would be able to do that. The second, policymakers shall be ready, because if we really access those data, we will understand so many things about this information and also about the impact that probably we will have to change the whole policy framework once we will have the knowledge of what is happening really online, because it's only through those data that we will have those knowledge. So just those 2 points to quickly close.
Thank you very much, Paula.
Oh, yeah. If I look at it, I totally agree with what Paula said. And Abdullah, I will say the multi-stakeholder process is the key to all we are discussing here. Especially you look at data governance, like the PhD researcher talked. Data governance has now become a key component in all the work we do. But this multi-stakeholder process involves us being able to dialogue with our governments, with civil society, with academia, with legal people, with technical people. So we have to sit with equity and hear each other out and agree to disagree. If we don't do that, starting at grassroots level, we will continue to be dividing ourselves, not and trying to, instead of building an internet that is not fragmented, we'll continue to have fragmentations at various levels, and that is why disinformation now is a big thing. I will go back to 2006. Time Person of the Year in 2006 was you. That you, when Times Magazine made us as Person of the Year, still applies today. And we have to know how to, the information we give out, we have to know that it is correct and it is impactful to our society. And that is the key of this session we have had today. And it also links up with meaningful connectivity. We should never forget that majority of the people that want to impact lives, they don't have connectivity. Look at it, 2.6 billion people, according to the statistics from the ITU. So let us go back to the basics and try to use our public media, especially those at grassroots level, equip them well to build the world we want, that will get better information for socio-economic development. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that strong pledge, Poncelet. Last question from my side, 2 minutes left, very short one. What is the biggest block we have to move away to go that path, to strengthen the multi-stakeholder approach, to look deeper into the challenges that are in a digital divide area, and to come up with a better version of, I put it very, very simple, with a better version of Article 19. What's the biggest block you have to move away to go that path?
If I start,
yes, Poncelet, go.
I have one simple equation. The Global Digital Compact implementation plus WSIS recrafted. We are coming to 20 years of the WSIS, the World Summit on Information Society. It's the WSIS that led to the IGF. If we have this global GDC implementation plus the WSIS recrafted, in my mind, in July, it equates to a stronger and strengthened IGF that will improve lives.
Thank you very much. Very precise. Abdallah?
I mean, I agree with Poncelet here about the importance of the huge pledges made within the Global Digital Compact, as well as the upcoming review of WSIS. My main concern here is that we rely too much on governments. And as we can see in democracies, you might end up with a government that doesn't like what you're doing. And as such, they either oppose what you're doing or they don't help you. I look at the example of the recent ruling by the Supreme Court in India, which made a landmark verdict regarding the access to digital life as part of the individual's own right to life. Mm-hmm. I think the civil society could start really by working at the local level, and if the government doesn't lend an ear to them, then they can always work towards the judiciary sector and find kind of some supporters in other aspects of their societies.
Thank you very much, Abdallah. 9 seconds for you, Paula.
Okay, so I fully endorse what was said. I would just say change the narrative, change the way we put this whole conversation, let it make attractive also for those who don't believe in democracy. And on the other side, involve municipalities. I think they could play a key role here. They are way more close to citizens, and they could be very active in this field.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank my panelists, Poncelet here on stage, Paula and Abdallah remotely. Thank you very much for your insights, for that great discussion. Thank you all, the audience here, for your questions and comments, and for participating online to this session on meaningful digital access and what role for PSM, public service media, in it. And thanks to Flora and her team for this great framing here, organizing the technical means for this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Workshop 2. 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 Workshop 2.